So again, thank you all for being here. I thought I'd open up by just sharing the story of how we got to today. It starts with John Vincent, who greeted you at the door. When I first got here back in October, moved here from Orlando, and John was one of the first people I met, and he gave me this book, Witness to Love, written by Ryan and his wife. I didn't know anything about Witness to Love at the time. Maybe I come across it on an internet search, but I didn't really know anything about it. And I glanced through the book. I thought, oh, well, this is nice, but I need to table this. I got to figure out, what's the Office of Family Evangelization going to do, set some priorities. I knew marriage would be key. But then a few months later, this came across my desk from Bishop Cahill, and it was from Bishop Strickland in Tyler, Texas, talking about Witness to Love. And two things jumped out at me. Because my background's in business. There were two stats that jumped out to me. And it said, when using Witness to Love, their study group, compared to the overall Catholic population. So I'll read you some stats about a typical Catholic couple that gets married in the Catholic Church. The divorce rate within 5 years is 23%, compared to 25% for the country. Secular weddings overall. And 10% were going to church. The couples that did Witness to Love, their divorce rate was lowered to less than 6%. And they were 70 to 90% more likely to still be attending Mass. I said, okay, seeing this data now, I really need to look into it. So I connected with Ryan and his team, Ryan and Mary Rose, and learned more about it. And then I was won over at why it's effective. Their program has grown. They started about 10 years ago from their little town in Louisiana, and now it's all over the world. It's in several languages, and they've even been invited to speak to Pope Francis himself in about a year. So it has made waves, and I think the reason why it resonates so well with young people nowadays is because of the mentor process, but a big difference, and we'll explore why today, is the mentees get to choose their mentors and develop a relationship with them. They're coached by the marriage prep team at the parish and how to share that marriage with the young couple. But I think we all know that young people nowadays keep their secrets close to their chest. They don't tell you what's really going on in their lives. They really need to trust you before they do that. This approach to marriage ministry, it's not just a program, it's a new way of thinking about marriage ministry. It helps build trust, which leads to dialogue, and we really get to know what's going on with these couples so that we can help them. They bond with the parish community, and they stay connected. So really excited to have Ryan here to share the story about Witness to Love and hopefully address the things you guys brought up in your opening remarks. So I'll hand over to Ryan, and then Mario, Nazario, Blanca, y Olga, y Alcina en español.
So imagine this, picture this, South Louisiana. Anybody's ever been to South Louisiana? Middle of the country, sugarcane fields, gravel road, pecan trees, and a bunch of family, a bunch of Thibodeaux, and on my dad's side, Barrettes hanging around. That's where we live. we live. My wife and I, we've been married going on 12 years. My wife's from Virginia. And I met her when I was finishing up grad school up in Boston. We've been married. We have 5 children. Led by my parents, my grandparents, aunts and uncles. So I came from a real deeply rooted family, And but around our 2nd anniversary, I have one aunt who has been married 7 times, and wow, right? She's a good lady. Not picking on anybody. Nobody's getting picked on today, but if I pick on you, it's okay. It kind of keeps you awake. She has this big 4th of July party. So imagine it's how hot it is on the 4th of July in Louisiana. I'm sure it's hot here, the humidity. But she has this pool party, lots of cold things to drink, and I remember she said she wanted to have a toast. And she said everybody lifted their glass, all the families there. I have a cousin who's a DJ, so it's all really cool, it's by the pool. And she says the next time, she said, I get married, I want to do it for the right reason. She had just divorced her 5th husband, and she said the next time I get married, I'm going to do it for the right reason. I'm going to do it to make myself happy. And everybody in the family went, yay! Up there. Gosh, Mary Rose, my wife, choked on the lime from the drink. Couldn't believe it. So I don't come from anything perfect, anything ideal, but I love these people. They're my family. Mary Rose, 2nd of 8 kids, and when the 8th child was born, her dad had enough and he walked away from the wedding. This is all detailed in our book, just kind of walked away. Mom and dad are still married. They've been married 47 years, but we both come from a background where I think probably like many people today, and I'm not young, I'm like 44, but we definitely come from a background where the issue of divorce is a big thing. And on the other hand, a bigger deal than divorce is the Lord, who is completely committed to us, and no matter what, in this sort of covenant. And I was telling Shirley a while ago, we had a late night here, which was great last night, so I needed, that hotel coffee wasn't so great, so I went to Starbucks, which I don't really go to Starbucks all that much, but I wanted that strong coffee. You ever need that really strong coffee to kind of wake you up? There were 20 cars in line, so I said, let me just go in. So I go in, and there's like 30, I don't know, 20 younger people, you know, and everybody's like masked up, and everybody's standing so far from each other. And it was so weird, you know, and I thought when I was in college and grad school up in Boston and stuff, I thought that was weird, you know, coming from South, but everybody's like so pulled back and so like separated. And I was thinking, man, this generation that's so isolated already has the highest suicide rates. And I mean, they are really in a hard place, you know. I was saying, I mean, I think it was one of my generation, one of the kind of last to be around like grandparents a lot and family. That sounds kind of negative and bad, but there's this context that was best suited to raise children married. And I know you get that. I know I'm speaking to the choir, but choir has to practice, right? Choir doesn't just show up on Sundays to sing. You know, so they have to practice. So it doesn't sound so great. So this is kind of a little choir practice thing, but I also want it to be kind of informative and challenging and tell you about our story. So I had finished it. I was working in a hospital system for a while. That was my background, and kind of in ethics and policy and law type things in the hospital system in Louisiana. And Mary Rose was coming. She had worked for the Diocese of Arlington, Virginia, and when we met in a bar. Really, and I kind of theology on tap, and it was kind of a Bible study in a bar, if that makes sense. So, but it was kind of funny, the Catholic couple met in a bar. But it was interesting when she came to Louisiana, and when we were engaged, and she said, the last thing I'm going to do is work for the church. Don't even tell anybody that somebody's coming from the Diocese of Arlington, Virginia, this diocese. Well, I accidentally slipped that out to a youth minister. And the next day, Mira had a call to take over marriage prep at the diocese of Lafayette, you know. And so it was. Then she ended up doing it. And so immediately we got sort of pulled in, voluntold into marriage prep at the diocese. And look, we're this like couple that loved John Paul II, World Youth Days. We were all those kind of young people. And we got there, and the way marriage prep in the Diocese of Lafayette would take place, there would be about 6 or 7 conferences a year, a lot of weddings there, a lot of Catholics, 80 couples at a time in an auditorium, very hot in the room all day. I mean, you ever did this? 80 couples, young people, and they're all half of them on their phones, and you tell people to put their phones down, and but they really don't, falling asleep, and you're up there doing the best you can to put your whole heart out there and hope that you could kind of make some impact. I mean, that's a noble thing, right? It's kind of very consistent with Christian example of St. Paul. And, you know, so we did that. You know, the food was always just sort of okay. The speakers, we were all volunteer. Nobody was getting paid. I think the diocese says, oh, we'll give you $10 for your babysitter for the day, you know. It's like, thanks. That like pays your gas, thanks, Father. But it was sort of the situation. But we loved it. We enjoyed it, and we were using something called God's Plan for a Joyful Marriage out of Ascension Press. Great program, very information driven, very much a virtue-based thing, which we liked. And then when our second child was born, sort of 2.5 years into our marriage, Mary Rose just decided, you know what, our second baby's born. The diocese was real flexible because she said, I'm going to go back home. She should, just kind of raise children and do that thing. And I was working in the hospital system. And then about a week after being home, I got a good friend of mine, Father Michael Delcom. You see him in the video in a little bit. He texted and he says, "Hey, you guys still up?" It's like 8:30 at night. And he says, "Can I stop by? I have something I need to talk about and have a bottle of wine." So, it's like, okay, we had. So be careful if your priest ever texts you and said, "I need to talk with a bottle of wine at 8:30. So he gets there and he's like, "Hey, I heard, Mary Rose, that a little bird told me that you left the diocese. And any way I could convince you, I mean, this is just after us kind of starting our new, life at home, mommy staying home thing. Any way I could convince you to come and take over marriage prep at the parish, just you make it work. You can do it from home part time." And we're like, "Oh." And so, of course, he opens the wine, and then you say yes, and then you regret that kind of thing. But we did love Father Michael. Interesting, he said, though, my Father Michael, was telling Justin this last night, was really one of the wedding priests of the diocese. Every diocese has about 3 or 4 or 5 priests that do probably 70% of the weddings. People just like them, and they like their message. It could be the older kind of groovy guys that, that say all the feel-good stuff, or it could be the young kind of challenge diehards, that are saying all the art of that. It's sort of, but these young people find them and they know who to ask, and but these guys generally are really, these priests are really committed to marriage, and I'm sure that's a similar situation here. It's been across the board. But Father Michael Dillon said, he said, I got to be honest though, I actually don't like marriage prep at all. And I'm like, what? But you like marrying 30 couples a year? He's like, to tell you the truth, he said, I'm like really burnt out. He said, I would rather do 20 funerals than do one wedding. He said, because a funeral, I know I'm not going to see that person next day. He said, but when marriage prep, I put all this time into this couple. I bend over backwards. I'm accommodating to their schedule. I cancel stuff on my end. I don't go to LSU football games because they need to meet. And he says, I think they're going to be at Mass the Sunday after their honeymoon. I never see them. And he said, I did everything for them. And he said, I've done this dozens of times. And he said, I'm just really done. He said, I know why priests get bitter. He said, because they look at marriage prep. He said, look at this. And he said, this is just not kind of worth the investment. So they just send it all to the diocese. They do the presentation move. So we kind of heard his thought and we think, well, that's interesting. So we go to the parish and volunteering at the parish. And we like data. I like information. I like understanding things. I think it's really important today. We've got to move into, we had a serious look at where people are. And so we're looking at the situation, and we're realizing at this parish that we were at, it's on average of 16 weddings a year. And so we started doing some research. We asked Father Michael, where are all the weddings, the couples that you married in the past few years? And he says, well, I just assume they're going to church. Like, Father, do you see him? He's the only priest there in this little town. And he said, well, I guess, he said, but I really don't. He said, maybe they go somewhere else. So we started. It was a kind of a smaller, maybe a medium-sized parish, where in an area where it's right outside of Lafayette, so people stay there because they can work in Lafayette, and so we understood. So we started asking around and found out that on average, so 16 weddings a year, and on average, 4 of those marriages were divorced in the first 5 years. So we did a 5-year look at this. Why are we doing a 5-year look? I'll get to this in a little bit, but the first 5 years of marriage statistically are when couples are the most divorce vulnerable, and it's when there's the highest bump in divorce in the United States among kind of Catholics and non-Catholics. And I'll show you some data about that. Obviously, there's struggles later on, 20, 25 years into nest type stuff. And so there was one couple though, I remember we wanted to find. So if you ever did these big diocesan presentations, a big group thing, there's always like 3 couples that hang around at the microphone, and somehow they make you feel good, we make them feel good, we're talking, and they're like, this is really worth our time. There's this one couple, they had done everything, adoration, gone to Mass, confession. They participated in retreats. We found out a year into the wedding they were already divorced. And it really kind of irked us because I don't know about you, but there's no time to waste today. Nobody has extra time to just sort of like goof off and do fluffy stuff. I mean, it's just busy. Maybe it's technology, maybe it's all, but it's just there's not a lot of extra time to just sort of hang around the parish and problem solve. But this is the current state of marriage prep in the United States. This is the experience of most parishes. So Witness to Love, we went from this little bitty parish, and only because of the Holy Spirit, praise God, and a lot of generosity of people supporting us, supporting this kind of movement. Today we went from that one little parish to a few parishes in Louisiana, a few dioceses, and today we're in around 80 dioceses in the U.S., primarily U.S. and Canada, some in France as well, and some English, Spanish, French, and Vietnamese. I say that because this process doesn't belong to Mary Rose and I. We really feel that what we did was sort of rediscover a biblical-based approach, an early church approach to marriage formation. That's very much like St. Paul's experience with Priscilla and Aquila, very much a catechumenate approach that Pope Francis has been talking about, and I think it's very suited for this time. There's more than one way to kind of skin a cat, right? And this has been our way. Other people can do other things. Nobody's forced to do this, but I appreciate the invitation from the Bishop and Justin to kind of share this. But these were the three questions that I would have you ask for yourself, and I don't know if you can see this or not, but where are the couples that you prepared for marriage over the past year? Some of you have had some great experiences with these couples, and you stay in touch and you see them. But to be honest, there's probably 70% of couples that go through marriage prep in the United States don't ever go back to the parish again after the wedding. That's just a general thing. There's numbers we get from the Austin Institute here in Texas, and also a group called Communio that we work with out of Washington, D.C. that does sort of tracking. What is your relationship dynamic with couples? Everybody thinks like your relationship dynamic with me. You look pleasant. I probably sound interesting. I mean, but this is kind of what marriage prep is like, just to let you know. You're still waking up. I'm enjoying this nice coffee I drink. And this in general is what marriage prep is like for most of the United States. It's a setting. I would say almost a Prussian model. Drill till you kill, get as much information in, teacher's desk, kind of podium information. And so when do you start this kind of relationship? And so then the third one, how would you even know if they were having problems? That was the main thing. How would you even know if couples were having problems? Unless you're this person who's just at the parish all the time and around at all the stores in town, and you're like, the grandfather, the grandmother of the community that just everybody knows, and you're coaching baseball and all this stuff. But that America doesn't exist as much today as maybe it used to in the past. And so what I'd like you to look at now is this document right here, this kind of one page thing. And I want to just show you. I need to stand by the microphone. I want you to look at just the left side of this paper, and I want to explain to you where marriage formation is in the United States. On the left side of the page, if you are doing marriage prep, and if you are doing marriage prep already, this is probably your experience. So we came from a background very much formed by the thought of John Paul II, of a generation of very committed to clarifying and wanted the clarification that John Paul II brought in Veritatis Splendor, his documents, the church's teaching, obviously, then Pope Benedict, and then that was really important personally to Mary Rose and I. So we're definitely more on the catechism kind of based, very appreciative of the church's teaching, but also very conscientious of the social aspect of the church. But most marriage prep starts with this in mind: the information, the content. We got to get this right. We're talking about sacramental efficacy, what grace does. I mean, very much, standing in the podium, that type of thing. That is where most of this. If you're using mentor couples in the church in the United States, it's probably only around 30% of churches in the U.S. that use mentor couples. If you're using mentors, it's pretty much all the time it's assigned, and that makes sense. If somebody's, you have these young couples coming in, you want to give them, you need trusted people, your frontliners. They have to know all the orders, the marching orders, and they have to be able to explain that and get these couples the right information. That totally makes sense, but they're always assigned, or it's this kind of very controlled arena of how the engaged couples meet them. The third thing is a lack of parish involvement. So it's marriage prep. I want you to think about this for a second. It's probably the only sacrament you can prepare for and not even go to mass once. Just let that be absorbed into your wherever you process things. That is amazing that that's been the situation. I know I'm just a generalization, but if you have a father, if he's a priest by himself in a parish with 6 masses and a visiting priest helping him out, which is a lot of the United States, or has 4 different parishes like these places we were working with in Vermont and California and Canada. And I mean, how would he even know? How would he even know if these couples are going to mass? Are they going to have them sign a bulletin and bring it to you? I don't know. It's certain. And then the final thing is the lack of support, which is probably the most acute situation. Is that there's just not really a relationship that evolved in the marriage prep process that made them really want to stick around. Some do. And so you look at the bottom, look at the divorce rate. Among Catholics in the United States, 23% are divorced in the first 5 years of marriage. The national average, just of anybody, it's not even faith, is 25%. All the work we've been doing all these years has a 2% difference. I mean, that's not moving the needle on anything. So that's the situation. So when we though were figuring out what to stop, I remember sitting on the couch. So this all came out of our house, my wife and I, and she would be here today, but 5 kids eat breakfast in the morning, and they're home. There's clothes to fold. Nobody does it for us. The grass has to get cut, all that stuff. But just normal things. These are the things that not only we wanted to happen, but we saw happen. And I'm going to explain to you why that happened. First of all, we really, really wanted to be formed in virtue. So I am very much rooted in the thought of, I had a lot of opportunity to study Thomas Aquinas, Aristotle. You're like, how does that even fit into marriage prep? Well, it does. Catechism of the Catholic Church, particularly because there's been a consistent view that human nature, or our actions, when they are rooted and ordered in a certain way, we can participate with not only actual grace being drawn to God, but sacramental grace, which is a real thing, is efficacious. It does something. So this is about a sacrament. This is not about the justice of the peace. This is about God being visibly present and efficacious in the lives of couples. And so we wanted that, but we needed to know that how do you demonstrate to couples, young people, not just kind of good habits, but to know that there's a certain way that we have to relate to each other that is the specific way that God's sacramental grace can do something. And that's what we want people to live in God's grace, right? And it's not just a song. The second thing is building community through friendship. I mean, the best gift, I tell my kids, our children, the best gift I ever had in my life was the friends I had. I don't remember anything from school, maybe a few things, just maybe my personality, but I do remember my friends. The best thing we could ever give to someone is friendship, or create an environment or support a culture where people can really be friends in Christ. That is a remarkable thing that endures. Increasing mass attendance. So I say this all the time. You can't feed a sacrament on a starvation diet. Maybe they're not communion ready. Maybe they're not disposed to receive Holy Communion. But we do need them going to mass. And finally, lowering the divorce rate. So you see on our side, what we on the Witness for Love side, this process that again we weren't program people. I don't even like to use the word program. What we felt like we discovered is a methodology or an ethos. That's one priest shared with me, or a way of growing in love and being transformed that is just rooted in what makes sense to our human nature, but also the way that God has operated into the principle of the incarnation by becoming enfleshed and being with us. There's in a Pope Francis, I guess we call that accompaniment. It's sort of a way that, and it provides two things. And I know I love these two words that Pope Francis says. He says marriage formation today really needs to provide proximity and generosity. That's really the two things that you need to call to mind in any sacramental preparation, but in particular marriage: proximity and generosity. What we feel that we've discovered in this process is a way that the parish can be close to couples, but also allows generosity on both sides. And I love this. Mother Teresa says this. She says, kindness, I love this, kindness has converted more people than zeal, science, or eloquence. So what we discovered, rediscovered, was a process that you don't need any books for. That a process that allows kindness to be provided for in the parish, that leads to a path that draws them into the sacramental life of the church. So this on the right side, you see what's different about us is that the first thing we start with was a look at men. We changed one thing. We kept all the content, all the traditional things that you would see, information-driven things you would see in marriage prep, but we didn't do that first. The first thing we did, we realized, and did anybody see this? Anybody gets this Magnificat? Everybody seen this? It's really amazing. Just really quick, there's a little reflection today where this lady said, unless you become as little children. And so, and she's talking about her 1-year-old that when she catches these glimpses. And if you have a 1-year-old or been around a little baby, you notice how like 1-year-olds, we have 1-year-old now, they kind of look at you and they're like, wow, maybe their eyes are just starting to work or something, but you ever notice that beautiful look? And man, they just you melt your heart. You stop everything you're doing, you pick them up, and they just trust you. I mean, what a amazing gift to do that. That look that they give you, it's beautiful. Now they don't give you that look when they're 10, but it is in a similar way. Like Christ says that these little ones are the model citizens of heaven. They're like in a similar way. These engaged couples are coming. They're so outside of unfortunately outside of the experience of trust. I was in college and grad school when everything was happening with the Archdiocese of Boston in around 2003. That was a real formative time for a lot of people in my generation X, I guess you call them. And a lot of people stopped going to mass, and including relatives of mine. Now, I mean, a lot of them were just lazy, but some of them are really like, this is disgusting, and this is unjust, and this is not a culture I want to be a part of. But it's so interesting that these young couples still come to mass somehow they still come to church to get married, which is remarkable. Maybe because somebody's paying for it, maybe grandma's paying for it or something like that, but they still come. And so what we discovered though is that we couldn't we didn't want our first step towards them didn't want to be with bringing up all the rules. We have to get to that. We realized we needed some way to bring them into friendship. There was this sequence that people would say, I think in the older way in the church in the United States, was sort of behave, believe, belong. You ever heard this? If you behave, then you can be a part of this, and then Christ is going to make sense. And I get that, because you need to be morally in the right situation before you can your intellect can kind of be redeemed and with grace. But we see this younger generation, they're so geared towards, and they're still desperate to belong first, And I'm not my starting point was not a lot of kind of the soft science or psychological science. That wasn't necessarily my starting point, but seeing now how they move and they grow, that was the first thing. So mentorship, what we did was we changed one thing. Instead of, we were part of the 30% of the Church of the United States that assigned mentors. we said, we realized when these couples were divorcing, we asked this one couple, why didn't you come to us, or this lady, because we couldn't get in touch with the husband or ex-husband, why didn't you come to us? And she said, honestly, she said, Mary's right, y'all felt so different from us. She's just real honest. You know, you're like really nice kind of Catholic people, and you had your kids in your house and all this stuff, and you know, we just really couldn't feel like we related to you. We thought they related to us, though. It was kind of interesting. We thought, well, don't you want this? But she said, no, you know, she said, but we didn't really. So we asked, you know, did you talk to anybody else in the parish or father? He said, no. We said, well, when you were struggling, who did you talk with? And he said, well, our friends. But then guess what friends they asked? Their divorced friends. They went to the divorced friends. And maybe misery likes company, but of course the divorced friends are going to say, oh man, look, you're still young, you're just 25, you can start over, just get out of this now. I mean, that is sort of what happens in our communities. So we realized, okay, you didn't trust us, well, maybe is there somebody in the parish that you trusted? And so we said, we're going to have you go and choose them. We'll talk about that, how we got to that. Second thing was removing into a relationship. Once there was trust, an authentic relationship and a friendship began to evolve in a way that we hadn't seen before. Why? Because there was some skin in the game. Third thing, increased mass attendance, which was important. And finally, the continued support. And as Justin was indicating in the bottom, so we're working with a lot of parishes and dioceses right now, but there's 7 parishes that from the beginning we have constantly tracked. And the Austin Institute has tracked this. The way we do this is we have an app, and every time a couple goes to Witness to Love, they're tracked, and we have this kind of continued ongoing support. This is just sort of a free thing, but we like the sort of the social sciences behind it that shows us where they are. In most of the parishes that we work with, on average, the divorce rate, it went from this 23% to about 5.8%, 6%. That's significant. It's not perfect. One parish says there hasn't been any divorces this one. And we stay in touch with them. They just have a few weddings a year, small community, they can stay in touch. But then the other thing is the mass attendance. We've seen over and over again, and we hear from pastors and priests and the deacons and the staff that these couples are going to mass after the wedding date, and they're continuing to go at a much higher rate than they were in the past. And this quote here, though, really kind of highlighted for us. It was from John Paul II, is this document, Familiaris Consortio, on the family. If you ever read it, Marriage and Family, paragraph 66, John Paul II said, in addition to all the science and all the kind of the pedagogical formulas and the doctrine, which is all relevant and important, he said that the most important thing that marriage prep should provide for couples is a desire to be a part of the church community. Because once you get a desire, then you can do so much. Once you hook them on wanting to be around this, you can teach them so much stuff. You can talk about pornography. You can talk about contraception. You can talk about volunteering. You can talk about getting your kids baptized. You know, there's so much you can talk about once you win them over, or Christ wins them over, and just sort of this new way of thinking. So we talked about this. This is some of the data right here. This is the role of mentors, and I know this is sort of always a big question. And it's the thing that people always ask about. What do the mentors do? Who they are? So what we came up with this. This is all we say when as a process that couples are introduced to this. I'll share this with you now. You pass these around. This is the sequence of what Witness to Love looks like. So this started for the first 4 years. Maybe we had a couple of papers we were using, but praise God, you know, we're a not-for-profit 501c3 group, and because of grants and donations, in addition to some of our first donations that made some of these things even possible, a lot of them came from priests around the U.S. and who just wanted to see this work out. But I want to show you the process, and I just want to look at the first meeting. This is what the first meeting looks like. The first meeting is not an exchange of transactions. Father's not taking a check There's no deposit. There's no intense paperwork. It's completely a conversation. So what we do in Witness to Love is we have basically primary Marys and I have do this training for parish leaders and for clergy. We do a lot of clergy presentations, sharing our story about how marriage prep being renewed in the parish, but also how marriage formation really ignites evangelization in a parish. That the stronger your marriages are in your community, it resolves so many other things. It actually produces sort of energy. But in the first meeting, Father the deacon meets with the engaged couple, and he welcomes them to the parish. He's likely probably never seen them before because they're not statistically going to church, or most of them are not going to mass. But that's okay. It's not about, nobody's asking them if they're cohabitating. We never recommend you asking about their personal life. We just assume that they are, because most of them are. We don't talk to them about all those things, in that area. But what Father does do, and we help them to see an opportunity to do that here, is to have a sort of conversation and to start a role of communication. And he says to them that he said, what this parish wants to give to you, and hopefully you'll continue going through this parish, that you're entering. We do Witness to Love here. We do this process where you're going to go into our parish and you're going to find a couple whose marriage, who's been married 5 years or more. That's all you say. They have a marriage that both of you look up to and that goes to church regularly. Sounds so basic, but you learn these three things like this. And you also say to them, and look, I understand you want to get married on June 15th. I looked at the calendar, June 15th is open, but at this parish, we don't ink in that date until you come back 2-3 weeks later with the mentor you chose, and you sit down with my marriage prep coordinator. All of a sudden, you have their attention, because they saw the parish and Father as just another vendor. Totally another vendor, which is so disrespectful. It feels disrespectful, but it just is what it is. They're completely a consumerist culture, and the church is another consumable, unfortunately. All of a sudden, you got their attention because they have those invitations in the car and they're stamped. And this was the last stop. This was the last stop. I promise you, it was the last stop, because they know the parish is going to bend over backwards to accommodate them, because we've done that. And that seemed nice a few years ago, but it's not. It's not what they need. My opinion. They need something a little bit more. And so all of a sudden then he says, and then before they're getting up, and that's kind of like they're halfway up, he says, Father, one more thing before you go. And we train these priests and deacons to say that. It's real easy. He says, look, the next time I see you, which is going to be 4 months later at this theology discussion night at the home of the mentor, he said, I want to have a conversation with you about what the gift of sexuality and of your relationship means to you. And about 4 months from now, I have that conversation. And I just want to talk about a gift. Now, before then, I just want you to promise me that you're going to have talked about this in the next 4 months before I talk. Little bitty planting the seed. You think, wow, that's not much. By the time they're walking out, she's bringing it up, and she's thinking about that hard, because she is not. It seems the lady is much more attuned to the interiority of being appreciating kind of sacrifice and all in. And when you're not married and you're together, statistically it shows that you don't feel always a great sense of commitment So this we learned these tricks of trade. I really believe this is in the Holy Spirit, and Father Michael helped found this with us in the parish, helped to see it. So that's the first meeting. That's all that happens, and it can be 40 minutes. But it's so important because Father, the deacon, or the deacon and his wife set the tone for what it's going to look like, and they're totally surprised because they were thinking all they had to do was get a date, go to some little retreat, check off the box, and then see you in a few months. That's the second thing. The second part is this kind of coaching session. So that's where you come in, likely. If that was what we do, is we train parishes. So people came last night. We train parish leaders to develop a marriage formation team, and that formation team is really in charge of kind of directing traffic. You don't need to be somebody that's kind of evangelical, somebody that really appreciates that, but these are not necessarily your mentors. These are people that understand where couples are and meet with the engaged couple and they mentor the choosing for the first time. And that's when they go through the premarital inventory. I think focus is used here primarily, or could be prepare and enrich, or whatever inventory you're using. That's when the marriage prep coordinator does that. Now, if you only have 3 or 4 weddings a year, Father the deacon could do that easily. But then that is where the mentor couple is so remember this question. Somebody's going to ask this: when do the mentors get trained? They never get trained. They never get trained. And I'll just be so clear on that. The last thing you want for these engaged couples to know is that this mentor couple that they chose, the church now is going to control the conversation. They don't want that. That's not what we told them. They have to go into this situation and choose. They choose this mentor. And what happens in that first meeting is that the mentor couple, you coach them. So you meet with the mentor couple they chose and the engaged couple at the same time, and you tell them, look, I heard you had a nice visit with Father. Tell me a little bit about your background. You worked there, she's there. Tell me about why you chose this mentor couple. That's how it starts. And this mentor couple, like, what is your thoughts on that? Very conversational. And then you give these workbooks we have. So you give these workbooks, and the mentor couple is told in front of the engaged couple, look, the gift that you're providing to this mentor couple, it may seem like something that's new to you, but I promise you, this is going to be the gift that is going to endure for a long time, because you're going to have an opportunity to share your marriage with them. You're not here to be experts, counselors. You're not spiritual directors. You're just here to basically model marriage. And this mentor couple, this engaged couple, is choosing you to do that. Total discipleship, only discipleship. Not using a perfect model, but these are questions that come up all the time when we got started. I'm not convinced that letting couples choose their own mentors is a good idea. We know most people probably in this room are thinking that, or maybe you're not. That's just sort of where we come from. That's the craziest thing I ever heard of. Why in the world would I trust anybody today outside of my little small group that I hang out with all the time? It's like a small group of people that hang around the church. I think people would be freaked out when strangers ask them to be their mentor. That was something we were hearing a lot when we started working like the Archdiocese of New York and Boston and places in Connecticut, where people just don't talk at all. And we were like, yeah, maybe so, but it worked for us. I'm like, well, maybe that worked in Louisiana. That was cute. And people would tell us all the time, oh, that works in a sugarcane field, and funny way of talking. And so I said, no, we started sharing it. Now this is being used from Vancouver, San Francisco, all over different places in France. And then so next thing, I don't think I can trust them to find a good couple. And that was the interesting thing. And what if they just don't know anybody in the parish? What if they not gone to mass? So how would they even know? So what you do is, Father says in that first meeting, look, he said, I'm gonna just assume I haven't seen you here before. But for you to get married here, you have to start going to mass. And they hear that and they're thinking, well, okay, thanks, Father, but I'll just find out when you're not having mass and I'll go to that one virtually or something. And so he says, but he said, you have to go to mass, and I'm going to give you permission to go and look around, and I want you find the couples in our parish who has a marriage that you look up to, totally superficial, all external. Who looks happy? Who's holding hands? Who's smiling? Who's kissing each other in the sign of peace, even when you're not supposed to say the sign of peace, right? Who's doing all these things? That's who these couples choose. They're not choosing anybody that has a doctoral degree or like has any type of expertise. It's interesting when we did this though. I want to just kind of fast forward. I think the most encouraging part about this process has been came out of the mouth of a newly ordained priest in Baltimore, Archdiocese of Baltimore, who's the oldest of 10 kids. I remember he kind of stopped. Oh, I got it. Why this works? You know, I guess he just was finally saying, "Aha!" He said, in every act of the new evangelization John Paul II called for, he said there has to be a space. There has to be this gap where we have to let the Holy Spirit have control. And it said we have to let go of the control. We have to let there be some aspect where God can do something in an innovative, creative way that's sort of outside of what we think and our own prejudice about the situation. And he says, I really think when you allow this engaged couple to go into the parish over the next few weeks and find a mentor, he said, I know they're cohabitating, they're contracepting, and they're okay with pornography. He said that. He said, I know that. He said, but I really feel like somehow there's some grace, because they were baptized, that is pulling them into be attracted to marriage, the gift of marriage. And he said he really believes that's the Holy Spirit. And when that engaged couple chooses that mentor couple, and they say that's the one, because they're doing it together, this is the first time they're ever having a conversation probably with anything significant besides what they're going to watch on Netflix. I promise you. And which is, Netflix is a disaster, in my opinion. But it's the first time they're really discerning, I think, in an Ignatius way, like St. Ignatius of Loyola, they're really letting the Holy Spirit work in their life to discover what's good, true, and beautiful about relationships and marriage, and then they draw into that. And almost all the time, the couple that they chose, and they're not choosing us. They don't choose us. Rarely, some do. They're choosing this couple that's much closer to them on this evangelization cycle. You heard of these four kind of this model of evangelization cycle? They said there's four places that we fall within evangelization. You might want to think about this. The first stage is a wanderer stage. Wanderer, like looking around, you're like there's no complete indifference. A wanderer stage. The second stage is a seeker stage. You know, think about like the Magi, right? Not Christian, definitely not Christian, but they were seeking. They were something got them out of indifference, and what was it? Something they saw, something they heard about. Somebody told them that this beautiful thing was happening, and it got their attention. And then a conversion, kind of the middle part. Then the disciple stage, which is a time of like being formed and studying and being supported. And the final stage is the apostle stage. So seeker, wanderer, disciple, apostle. That makes so much sense here, because I think most marriage prep stuff has been written by people in the apostle disciple stage. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, hopefully we're there, needing constant conversion and healing, forgiveness, got to say we're sorry a lot, make mistakes. But we're assuming that most engaged couples who are coming to the parish are seekers, but very few are seekers, very few. Most of them are wanderers. And so it takes something that's reflective of the attributes of God's truth, goodness, and beauty to get their attention. And we can't do that because we can't provide that generosity and proximity that Pope Francis was talking about. So when they go and choose someone, and who they're choosing is really interesting. You know, one of the most challenging aspects of marriage formation in a parish is that it's impossible to get new people to marriage enrichment. It's always the same people that come to all the marriage enrichment stuff. These engaged couples, though, are not choosing your marriage enrichment. people that already come in, they're always choosing someone that's close to them that they can relate to. And they just know it. They know who they can relate to and talk to. Unless you're already seen as this wise sage in the community that everybody trusts. But for the most part, they just know it. And they choose those people. And the ones they're choosing, we always find, and this is sort of the Holy Spirit area, is that they're ripe for evangelization. They're ripe for enrichment. It's a couple who likely, their children are older, they're outside, maybe their children are not going to church, maybe they've gone through a difficult time to transition. But I always find like the Holy Spirit is really doing something there that we could never have organized ourselves. And the power of this one thing, that when this engaged millennial couple or this younger couple comes up to this mentor couple, this married couple in the parish and says, hey, you don't really know us, but maybe you do. Maybe they cut your grass or babysat. A lot of times it's the kids who babysat for somebody who they chose. They said, Father said that we should find a couple who's been married 5 years or more, goes to church regularly, and has a marriage we both look up to, and we just feel like you have a marriage that we look up to, and we want to know if you could walk with us. And they say that in their own words. They haven't rehearsed things, and this mentor couple, this married couple, is usually blown away interiorly. They can't believe it. Us, but we don't like go to all the church things. They're like, no, we just want you to walk with us. And, you sure? And it's kind of back and forth. And like, what does that mean? Well, we have to get together, once a month, and then we go to church twice together during the month, and then we go to adoration together once a month, and we have a scavenger hunt. But it's just a few things. Would you do it for us? Because this couple really wants to move forward to get these invitations out in the mail, remember? And so they're motivated, and so they're like, yeah, okay, yeah. Rarely do the people say no unless they have a health issue or they're having some serious marriage problems. That's sort of the dynamic. Very basic, nothing complicated. We've seen it over and over and over again. The one question that comes up all the time, the big question, is what happens if this is an area that's really important to you? I hope it is. What happens if this married couple, this mentor couple, is not on board with the church's teaching with regard to fertility awareness, natural family planning, humana vitae? What if they like he's sterilized and like all this stuff that people. And so this area that's really important to us, and we really believe in sacramental grace. We believe that God can't operate sacramentally. I mean, he can do whatever he wants, but from what we understand from the church's teaching, that there are things that are intrinsically evil, and there are things that prevent grace from being operative. And doesn't mean actual grace can't do something, but sacramental grace. And so the reality is, if you do some research on this, the Washington Times had a report in early 2000, a survey, and I don't know how they got this, but they concluded that only 98% of Catholics in the fertile years are using, or 90% are not, but it's only 2% of Catholics in the fertile years are using the church's teaching for working with fertility matters. 2%. That's amazing. You know what, like scandal? I mean, the scandal of that is, the scandal in the sense that not anybody's doing anything bad, but that we're not like living the effectiveness of sacramental grace in our life of couple. What a missed opportunity. And I know you heard it, these couples that miss opportunities to have, as mentioned, they think about it later on and say, God, I wish I would have done this or done that. I mean, what a pain in the heart. And like, I'm not saying priests need to, say all these things from the pulpit, because I don't know if that's the answer either. It's challenging from the clergy's perspective too, because there's only so much you can say in front of kids, and that's appropriate and where they are, and when do you say that, but you shouldn't only be preaching about, the church teaching here at the homeschool mass. You should be doing something a little bit more creative than that. And so, but this area was really important. So how that comes up. Remember the first meeting, how I said, Father said, we're going to have a talk about sort of the role that sex has in your life, and that relationship, physical intimacy, and children. Well, at that fifth meeting, if you go to step 3, there's these monthly meetings that now have been taking place. Particularly, and you'll see in the workbook we'll share with you, the first 4 meetings of the 6 meetings are being developed in the moral virtues. Prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. You're like, who uses that? Well, we don't say those words out front, but we spend a lot of time developing a sequence of them growing in the moral virtues, the cardinal virtues, so that that they can get their nature in shape. The fifth meeting, and the fifth meeting is when Father the deacon goes into the home of the mentor couple. This is likely the first time ever someone from the parish has ever been into that home. Remember, these are outside of the normal. That's an amazing opportunity for a parish. And I know some maybe clergy don't feel comfortable with that, but the gift of having someone from the parish go into the home and be there and have dinner is a huge advancement for our culture. It's a big step in the right direction for society in general. I think we need to move past that fortress mentality that the church was sort of built upon in the United States, where it's like the big walls and everybody just comes in the parish, and then it's kind of the secular and the sacred, profane. I kind of get that, but we really need to kind of develop this kind of new model if we want to keep things open, I think, and have more families come. But this night is huge, where this comes up. And I'll give you an example. I told last night that there was one of the first meetings where we proposed this, and when Father Mike would go to this home, there's usually wine or beer. It's meant to be nice. It's meant to be a good conversation. And you remember, you as a deacon or the clergy are going into a situation where this engaged couple and this mentor couple have already had 4 months of friendship building and relationship building and talking about some very human things. Not getting really much into sacramentality or sacramental theology, but it's where you kind of move them into this new direction. So first four meetings is definitely like pre-evangelization type things, and then you moving them into this context. And this comes up all the time about contraception. And one of the model conversations I remember is that Father was introducing this topic, and this mentor couple, the husband says, "Father," he says, "look, I got to be honest. He said we've been married 25 years, and he said, you know, we had 2 children, and he said, like, this is like such a big, you're making this such a big deal." He said, "but like, I have never heard this once in my life." He said, I kind of knew like some things about it, but no, it was never presented to us ever in a way that you're talking about. He said, "So is this something that you're just saying, or is it something that the church teaches?" And so it was like a back and forth, and Father's doing the best he can. He's just and Father doesn't want to get anybody upset, but he was trying, and it's back and forth. While the engaged couple, though, what are they doing? They just watching ping pong, back and forth, back. Yeah.
I was sharing a little story. I was with some buddies who played golf. We were like 22 or 23 at the time. We all went to Catholic school, and we were having beer after playing golf. And then we were talking about the church. I don't know how it came up. I was working with the church at the time. They were asking about the church's teaching on sexuality, and I explained why contraception is not good. And I explained it just like, you know, starting with a why. And then my friend looks at me and goes, "You know, I really think you got to get some of your ideas up to the leaders in the church so they can start to share those ideas." It's like, we went to Catholic school together. This is what the church has been teaching since Humanae Vitae, and like, he just never heard it, or maybe it was presented in such a way that he couldn't hear it at the time. It was over beer after golf that for the first time, he really felt like he heard the church's teaching. So just wanted to say that because I happened to meet with 2 buddies from Catholic school.
Yeah, good. Yeah, see, typical, and that's sort of where we were. And so this engaged couple, fast forward later on, well, Father Michael calls Mary's and I after this meeting. He says, "Look," he said, "man, well, what a setup." He said, "I didn't know that was going to go this way." But Father said, "You know," he said, "tell you the truth," he said, "I'm glad that conversation happened." He said, "I'd rather have been made very uncomfortable and having to say those things than a conversation to have never taken place at all." So when you just say things in charity and patience, it plants seeds. Well, we didn't know the seeds. So 3 years later, this couple was married and having fertility issues. Young people, the fertility issues they're having, for whatever reason, is much higher than obviously it used to be, whether it's pornography, I mean, whatever it is. But man, this is a tremendous struggle. So they were this couple was at an IVF clinic, about to sign, commit to all the financing. You know, it's like $20,000 a cycle for IVF. And I get people want to have children, they get desperate. I understand that. But this girl, before they were about to sign things, called Mary Rose on her cell phone, which was interesting. She still had her number, and told Mary Rose, "Hey, Mary Rose, you know, 3 years ago when we had this conversation this night with Father Michael, I remember IVF came up." And, you know, and she said, is there something really not right about this? Like, because no one else was going to say that. There's not one person in Big Lafayette, very Catholic, that was going to tell her that they shouldn't do that, you know. Even though, I mean, IVF is bad stuff. And Mary said, yeah, she said, look, if you want to just take a break, I want to recommend you to a NAPRO doctor, kind of more that's rooted in the church's teachings, and do something that's a little bit more kind of innovative. And so anyway, this couple did not go through the IVF procedure, did not do the financing, and went on to meet with this other doctor that we know, and they have 2 children now, and this is later on. But because of Father Michael putting himself in a situation that made him uncomfortable, and maybe that he wasn't a super expert on, he's just a normal, good diocesan priest. He's just a good guy. But, you know, he knew interiorly that he needed to say this. So I just want to let you know kind of where that comes up. I talked about this already. This is sort of just our team here. One more thing about mentors, and this came up from Justin actually put this together, and I don't know if this is clear or not, but the whole idea is the first thing, I say this all the time, is to retain trust in this younger generation, but also create trust. Trust, I think, is the platform, it's the classroom for catechesis. It's where it's friendship. Remember, this is the old model. So look at the blue would be us, marriage prep, people in charge of marriage prep, and that's the experience of us. And then the orange or yellow here, that is the experience of the engaged couple. So what happens here? Involvement and control. With assigned mentors, we have a lot of control. We understand everything that's happening, everything that's being said. There's no question. But this model, I promise you, there's enough data to show you this is the same trend. If you want to see the same old, keep doing this. Unless God kind of changes, unless culture changes really quick and everybody gets back on board with natural law, which I just don't see that happening overnight. But if you want the same results, do the same thing. If you want different results, consider this. Consider loosening up some of the control and doing something in a way that really sort of meeting these young people kind of where they are. I like Justin had sort of put this together, and it's what, by the way, this middle part. So freely chosen is where we came from, but there are parishes who just say, and I respect that. Ultimately, it's Father Deacon's canonical responsibility to marry these people. He needs to know if he has to make the personal decision if they're ready to get married, if they can, and they meet kind of all the canonical requirements. But some parishes say we'll let them choose, but we're gonna create a pool of couples that they can choose from. We call it showcase couples. This term came out of a parish in Connecticut, St. John's Basilica in Stamford. Diocese of San Diego calls them spotlight couples. But what you do is you get a binder, and you choose 10 couples in your parish or 5 couples, and these are couples that you trust, and you form them. And every time an engaged couple goes to the parish, you give them this, and you say, I want you to take this, and this couples, this is their pictures, their profiles, this is what they do, this is where they like to hunt, fish, whatever it is. This is what their favorite kind of sports teams, and this is the times they go to mass. You just have to take this with you, and you go and you discern who could be your mentor, and they know that somebody's going to get asked. You know, now does that make sense at all? That's a kind of another option. And the way this all gets started in the parish is that there's the first Sunday of you do a kickoff Sunday where for Witness to Love, or this new kind of program where you say, Father Deacon of the marriage reporter says, this Sunday on, now we're doing something different in marriage prep. This Sunday on, where everyone in the parish is going to be involved in marriage prep. It's not just going to be a few of us. And we're going to be encouraging engaged couples to look at who are the happily married couples in this parish. So to let you know, if you're smiling and happy and holding hands, it's likely that you can be asked to be a mentor. That you say something like that, it gets people's attention, gets someone on their best behavior. And we talk about in the rollout process.
You don't have any couples to say, okay, we're not sitting.
Yes. So let me just catch my breath for a second. I'm going to show this little video and just why I see how they do this.
What is the enduring value of one good marriage? It's a question we've asked ourselves over and over through the years. The witness of one good marriage touches countless lives, transforms parishes, communities, and is a shining beacon in a hurting world.
Witness to Love is a ministry with a singular focus: the preparation and accompaniment of couples, setting them up for success as vibrant members of their parish community. We're introducing a culture where love can be revealed, supported.
Let me just turn the recording.
While proper formation is critical, we all know that alone it is not enough to keep newly married couples connected to their parish after the wedding day.
We know that in order for someone to experience a lasting conversion, they need solid, trusted relationships with people that are willing to walk with them through the ups and downs of life. These relationships require time, work, and a true gift of self to flourish. We have teamed up with the top experts in theology, marriage preparation, psychology, and evangelization to develop a truly new and holistic approach that sets the proper environment for intentional formation and authentic relationship building. These relationships become a lifeline back to the parish for the engaged and newly married couples, and the fruit we have seen has been tremendous.
Overwhelmingly, these engaged couples stay faithful, particularly in Mass attendance. I see them often in the Adoration Chapel, just wanting to get engaged, wanting to know what's going on in the parish. They just stick around. There's a life, there's a health in them. And I know it's a direct offshoot, a direct growth component of Witness to Love, so it's been enjoyed a lot.
The accountability that is just built into the program was wonderful, I think, for us. First, we had accountability with our mentor couple, somebody who we were friends with before, and so we continued to have a relationship with them after. And knowing that leading up to our marriage and even into our marriage, when we had a problem or needed a resource, we had them as an outlet. We knew that we could turn to them in times of need.
Each engaged couple is able to have an experience of not just an intellectual understanding of what marriage might be or some techniques of where they're going to go from here, but experiential understanding of how marriage operates, not just in my own life, but in the life of other couples in our parish.
Es un programa que nos ayuda como pareja, como para empezar nuestra vida, para fortalecer nuestras relaciones. Y es muy importante porque cuando nos casamos necesitamos ir fuertes, necesitamos ir sólidos, necesitamos ir valientes a este reto que Dios nos da.
Witness to Love is a great marriage preparation program, but it's far more than that. It recognizes that when two people come together, commit themselves to God and to one another, the sacrament of marriage, that this is an important transition in their lives. Their lives are changed. And Witness to Love provides a couple to walk with them, to mentor them, and to help them into that lifetime adjustment through the sacrament.
All I could think was that this just makes sense, that, no married couple should have to do marriage alone. We should all have a mentor couple and someone to guide us and support us during those times that we may struggle and fall, because we all know no marriage is perfect.
One of the things that's lost in our culture today is the art of mentoring, the ability to walk with someone one-on-one and to help them through life.
I think that's a real gift of the program, Witness to Love. It's just to walk alongside an engaged couple and to share with them our experiences in marriage, the ways that we've gotten it right, the ways that we've fallen short, and the ways that we're still striving to make our marriage even better.
Our young couples are working to bring them into the parish, to incorporate them, to build a relationship, that build a bridge from the parish to the couple and back and forth. It's just been phenomenal and well worth the sacrifices that we've had to make.
There aren't lots of programs and products being produced right now as the church
seeks to wrestle with this crisis of marriage and family life that we face. Witness to Love, to me, is an authentic development in marriage preparation. It's solid Catholic content, it's beautifully produced videos and materials, and its attention to some of psychology's best insights make it a program worthy of exploration. Anyone who's serious about the evangelization.
Our engaged newly married couples desperately need a supportive community with authentic relationships. We hope that you will join us in this critical mission. Please visit witnesstolove.org to learn how you can be a part of the renewal. May God bless you and your marriage.